Let us pray. Almighty God, giver of all victories, we thank thee for the opportunities which abide in our land, for the guidance in the hour of peril and thy tender love in times of need. Help us to remember with reverence the valor and devotion of our departed comrades. Not only those whose bodies consecrate our country's soil, but also those who sleep beyond the seas, and those others whose resting places will not be known until the last day, when the deep will have given up its dead. O God, teach us to honor them by ever cherishing the ideals for which they fought. Keep us steadfast in the cause of human rights and liberties, of law and order and true Americanism. Give us the power to see and the will to do the right. Grant that the American Legion may preserve the high idea for which our comrades died. May their merciful blessing rest upon those they left behind. Keep us forever firm in righteousness, humble of heart, and unselfish in purpose. Amen.
Thank you, Paul. Would you all please join me in saluting our nation's colors? Officer Neal.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
That's the way to sing it.
Thank you very much. Would you all please be seated? Good morning again, and welcome to American Legion Post 194 Memorial Day Breakfast and Remembrance.
But I didn't go to the game.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Zachary German. I'm the commander here at Post 194. Over the past 2 years of serving as commander, I've written out several speeches, and I always struggle to find the words to convey how important tomorrow is. Google says Memorial Day is a day to remember and honor the men and women who died while serving in the U.S. Armed Forces. Again, to echo what I said on Veterans Day, a single sentence. It doesn't convey the importance and weight that tomorrow should bring. So where words fail me, I'll turn to math, numbers, unyielding and intangible facts. For a moment, I'd like you to think about a gallon of milk, how heavy it is, its size, its mass. It's not hard to imagine. Now, a number that is hard to imagine, 2,852,901. 2,852,901. That's the most accurate number I could find for American men and women who laid down their lives for this country. And it's upsetting to me that that's the best estimate as a nation we can come up with. Wars have passed, the records weren't accurately kept. Figures from modern day are askew. What I'm about to say will be uncomfortable for some to hear, as it should be. Nothing about this day should ever be easy to hear or say. 2,852,901 American souls. A number so massive it becomes a statistic. Impossible to rationalize without context. For reference, that's the population of Maine and New Hampshire combined. Or the entire population of Chicago, the third most populous city in America. Still, that doesn't seem to drive such a vast number home. So let's bring it a little closer. That's 4.6 times the population of Boston. That's still hard to imagine. The average human adult has 1.5 gallons of blood. If we take the number of Americans who lost their lives for our way of life, that would be 4,279,351 gallons of blood spilled so we can sleep peacefully at night. Now let's talk about our little town, more specifically Chabaco Lake. It's a 209-acre lake with an average depth of 9 feet. I did some math, so I come up with an approximate volume of 2.2 million gallons. If we take every American lost in war until 1863, we can fill our lake. If we take every American lost from 1863 till present, we can fill our lake again. If we take every American lost due to service-related injuries and suicide, mental illness, we can fill our lake 2 more times. 4 times. 4 times so far. Now let's include the wounded. Let's say they just lost a half gallon of blood for our nation. We could fill our lake 14 more times. It's an extremely unsettling thought. And as I did my research writing this speech, that gallon of milk got a whole lot heavier. So what do we do with these unsettling numbers? We carry the weight. We carry the weight of their sacrifices with us daily. They were daughters, sons, mothers, fathers, our brothers and sisters. We live the best life we can because they cannot. The debt owed to our departed comrades is a debt that can never be repaid, but we owe it to them to try. In conclusion, I'd like to read a poem by Don Nielsen. Happened today and in the past, sacrifices made for ours to last. Wives to widows, families torn, gave their lives, for them we mourn. Gone forever, souls are lost. Freedom comes with this cost. Enjoy the life they did preserve. The fate they suffered did not deserve. On this day, lest we forget, to them we owe our life in debt. Thank you, and let us eat.
Who is it that you introduced? Well, it's good to be with you once again on Memorial Day. I recall being here when it was rainy, and we thought about, are we going to march? And then someone made the statement, well, when we were on active duty, we just put a poncho on and marched off. So evidently we will march, but this is much better weather. This is the 50th anniversary of the return of Vietnam Armed Forces coming back home. 50th anniversary. March 29th, 1973, the Armed Forces began to come home. And by 75, all the civilian cadre of technical advisors came home. But did you know that from 1955 to 1975, civilian advisors and military personnel were present in Vietnam? I think we know from, say, 65 and on, but from 55. The fall of Dien Bien Phu in 1954 and the exit of the French left a vacuum in this country. And so in Vietnam, they were trying to reconstruct themselves. And the U.S. provided some technical assistance. In 1955, there were about 100 technical advisors. Some were military, most were civilian. By the time of the Tet Offensive in 1968, There were 536,000 troops on the ground in Vietnam. And by '69, that figure had swelled to almost 570,000 troops. Each person who arrived in Vietnam left a home, left a hometown, or more specifically, they left a place that was known as home. Depending on where home was located, Vietnam was 8,000 to 10,000 miles away. Upon arrival in Vietnam, unfamiliar sights, unfamiliar sounds, and unfamiliar smells had to be identified. This was different than hometown. Soon, the routines of a combat unit, a medical unit, a logistical unit became familiar, while home was receding in the distance. Contact with home was provided by the Military Postal Service. We all put APO as our address. And then there was the occasional radio patch telephone conversation with spouse, children, parents, other family members, friends. In October of 1968, I made a patched call to home. I had contacted the Mars officer and sat in the queue waiting for the right time for this patch to be made. I got the call. I gave him the telephone number of my wife. And the Marine at El Toro spoke to my wife and said, I have your husband on the phone. If you're not familiar with radio communication, he's going to speak, he'll say over, and then you can speak, and then you have to say over. That was news to my wife. So I get on, and I greet her, and then I say over. And she says, hi, hon, where are you? And the sergeant interrupted and told my wife that that was secret information. So then she said, well, how are you? And again, the sergeant intervened and said, ma'am, you cannot ask that question. My wife was so flummoxed. She didn't know what to say. We said goodbye. I love you. And that was the conversation. What I discovered from my wife, however, is after that conversation, she wrote down on a piece of paper all the questions that would be legitimate. And then she ran them by me in a letter that eventually got to me. So that the next time I could call and reach her, which I did do in December. And I gave the telephone number. Same sergeant at El Toro. The phone rang. And the phone rang. And the phone rang. She wasn't home. He said, we can wait a little longer. And I said, okay. So at 0200, I finally got the opportunity. Gave him the number. It was busy. I did not call anymore. 2 strikes. I didn't want to go for the third. But that's the way we communicated when we were away from home. For the military and the civilians, the experience of life as it was lived at home was colliding with the reality of death in a country very far from home. In time, the moment to leave Vietnam arrived. It finally arrived. This day is known as the Diros date, That's an acronym. I think some of you know what it means. Date estimated for return from overseas. Key word, estimated. For everybody but the Marine Corps, that date was usually 12 months after a person entered Vietnam. But for the Marine Corps, it was different. The Marines, so they say, gave 12 months in Vietnam for the United States of America. And they gave 1 month to the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Hence, 13 months of tour in Vietnam. Excitement, hesitation surrounded all of us as we anticipated going home. Once we arrived in the United States, we received our leave papers and transportation documents for our return home. Soon, we learned that while we were in Vietnam, our country was undergoing a deep rift regarding the reason for the war and an almost inconsolable pain from the rapid increase in combat-related deaths. The word home, so treasured when we left, was now being emptied of its meaning by emotional, political, and philosophical positions regarding the war. And these positions were gaining strength. The only home for all of us would be where our families lived. It was not our country. We were told not to wear our uniform in public. So we did not. Nor did we talk about our time in Nam. On March 29, 1973, all military personnel returned home to the United States. This was the result of the Paris Peace Accords. We returned and we began the long walk to home. 58,281 came home in a flag-draped coffin. Most finally made it home, but a significant number of military are still on the road to home. PTSD, depression, fear, and an entertaining of suicide now have accompanied so many that were in Vietnam as they try to make their way back home. On March 29th, 2012, this day was designated as Vietnam Veterans Day. On March 29th, 2017, the Vietnam War Recognition Act was signed into law. At the Marine Corps birthday, November 10th, 2018, I was there with 2,000 of my closest friends celebrating the Marine Corps birthday. It's a festive occasion, a lot of energy in the room, probably more alcoholic beverage was consumed before noon than could be calculated. The Commandant was there, and he looked out over all this crowd and he said, I want all of you who served in Vietnam to stand up. Silence prevailed in the room. We didn't get up. And then finally, a few brave souls got up, and the rest of us awkwardly moved our chair and we stood. There were probably 200 of us in that room that claimed Vietnam as part of our military career. The Commandant looked at everyone and said, I want all of you who are seated to stand and give these men and women a Marine Corps birthday applause. It was deafening. We didn't know what to do with it. I was seated with two other Marines who had been in Vietnam, and we just sort of looked at one another and said, what is it that just happened? We had been quiet about our life, and now we're exposed. The Commandant went on to say, it is because, and this is a quote, it is because of those who served in Vietnam that we as a nation have been able to welcome home those of you who served during Desert Storm, Persian Gulf, Iraq, and Afghanistan. The Commandant alluded to the fact that those who served in Vietnam re-entered life in the United States under a cloud of suspicion and scorn. They chose not to speak about their time in Vietnam. Many, in silence, retain the memories of their experiences in the deep recesses of soul and spirit. The words "welcome home" were not spoken to those who returned from Vietnam, but they were conveyed, and maybe some of you were part of it, up at the airport in Bangor, Maine, as those troops came off the flight and received an applause and a welcome home. There's a lot there on YouTube of the welcome home. As people were on an aircraft and the pilot announces, on our flight this morning are so many, and he listed the unit, and the whole cabin just erupted with applause, with a welcome. These two words, welcome home, they don't have any special quality when they appear in print. They are words best understood in a context. When spoken truthfully with love, they have the capacity to bring the process of mending bodies, hearts, and souls. They are words of embrace and invitation. This week I officiated at a funeral for an Air Force veteran, 56 years old, about the age of my son. At the interment, I met a fellow who was a grandfather, and he and I started to talk. He was grandfather of the deceased. He told me that he was a medic during Vietnam, 25-year career. He had spent time with Special Forces in 68, 69. We talked about our shared experiences. And then he said, you know, Dean, it's so difficult for me to hear taps. I never can get over it. And as he told me that, his eyes began to glisten. I think you all have, at one point or another, experienced that moment. We chatted a little bit more, and then it was apparent he had family responsibilities. So I shook his hand and I wished him well, and I said, Brian, welcome home. He stopped, he looked at me through tears. He said, you know, Dean, I've heard that before, but for some reason, it reached a part of me that I never thought could be reached. Welcome home. 2 words. 2 words that have the capacity to change life and living. It is a gift that those of us who have served during Vietnam have been the carriers of. And it's taken us 25 years to finally utter those two words. So for all of you who claim Vietnam as part of your military resume, welcome home.
Thank you very much, Dean. That was an excellent speech. At this time, I'd like to invite any of our elected officials or distinguished guests that would like to say a few words up, to give them the opportunity to speak to us all now.
Senator Wilson?
Thank you. It's very, very difficult to follow that amazing speech, so thank you all. Can you guys hear me? So I am Kristen Kasner. I also live here in Hamilton. I am our new state representative for the new 2nd Essex. Many of us remember us as the 4th Essex. Right now, the 2nd Essex is Hamilton, Ipswich, Rowley, Newbury, Georgetown, and Precinct 1 in Topsfield. So we're an interesting new group. And just wanted to say thank you so much for having me here. I was sworn in on February 3rd, so I'm just getting to know, I know some of you very well from being in town. It's so nice to meet others, and I hope to continue to meet the rest of you and have conversations throughout my term and hopefully future terms. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished veterans. Honored to be with you here today, along with Senator Tarr, who was here. He's been a good friend and colleague, and just really helpful to understand the district, and also introduced me to a lot of you. And it's been a great team up here on the North Shore. There's a lot of new reps on the North Shore, and there's a lot of really wonderful representatives and senators that have been here for a while. So I feel lucky to be part of that group to help our communities understand the things that are going on with all of us in our communities, things we talk about a lot. Obviously, water issues, electricity, road infrastructure. My background is in planning and community development, and I started a campaign, and they said, "Are you going to talk about infrastructure at every event?" And I said, "I might," because what we have, really, the things that serve us and keep us strong between for me, just kind of human first, and then, what do we need to just, one, survive, and what do we need to grow, and what do we need to strengthen our community. So here, I wanted to say thank you. I'm really impressed with this group. This place, for over 100 years, you guys have been here to be a place, a home for those who have brave men and women who've served, remember sacrifices to defend the ideals of freedom and democracy, and with an unwavering commitment to service. And for all of you, this place here, the home, to continuously fight tirelessly for veterans' rights, ensure that no veteran is left behind, create this place that creates human bonds that strengthens our community here in Hamilton as well as regionally. And we acknowledge the importance of just being together as a community, as a group here today, a community, as a region, as a nation. And I want to just say to support those that have served and continue to serve, fellow veterans and our communities, and setting an amazing example for others in the community to service. There's a million ways to serve at all different levels. I've been speaking to a lot of middle school classes, and just there's so many ways that we can step up and serve at, when we're children, when we're 8th grade, when we're teenagers, and whether in service, or just in service to your community. So it's truly inspiring, this place. And in terms of Memorial Day, it's so to remember those that we have lost, and for the reasons why we've lost. And we should talk about this a lot more than just on Memorial Day. I'm glad we have this. And I just feel like we move so fast, the cycle moves so fast between, social media and other things, and to stop for a moment and really take that time to remember is so important, and it's very nice to be here. I have a young 7-year-old just trying to, and it's been great in speaking with younger people to understand this moment in history and how we're in that fabric, that all of us, all of you are etched in history, and you've changed the direction for the better. And we need to continue to tell these stories and inspire all of generations to come. So again, I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much. And I hope to meet and talk with you more as we continue on. So thank you very much.
If there's anybody else who would like to speak. Alrighty, we got one last thing we gotta do before we go. Can I get the crew out here? Alrighty, can I get the crew inside? Come on, everybody out. Come on, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Let's get this crew out here and give them a nice round of applause. Come on, file on in. A lot of these events, it takes a family to put these things on, and this is all they believe in family. So thank you to the cooking crew, thank you to our wait staff, thank you to our National Honor Society volunteers. Breakfast was wonderful.
No comment?
All right, thank you all for attending.
Changed up the recipe this year, so.
Thank you all for attending. That concludes our Memorial Day remembrance. And have a wonderful day. We'll be going to Mass at the Methodist Church at 10 o'clock, 10:30, excuse me. So if anybody would like to attend Mass, we're going to Mass at the Methodist Church, 10:30. Thank you very much.